Welcome to Future Ready Live, where we talk about topics that will help CPAs, CGMAs, finance and accounting pros prepare for change and transformation. I am your host, Tom Hood, the EVP of Business Engagement and Growth at the AICPA CIMA, the largest global body of certified professional accountants in the world. Today, we're going to be talking about how to rewire your mindset for AI with one of the leading voices in accounting and finance education, Professor David Wood from BYU. David's a professor, author, and thought leader on the intersection of accounting, AI, and learning. His new book, Rewiring Your Mind for AI, lays out a roadmap for how professionals can think, work, and thrive in what he calls the era of intelligence. By the way, I've read that book and I highly recommend it. I think it just got published recently. So I'd encourage you to pick up a copy. Today, we're going to be covering mindset, collaboration with AI, and the future of accounting education, and what skills finance leaders are going to need to succeed. David, say hello to our audience.
Thank you, Tom. It is wonderful to be here as always. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's awesome to have you here. All right, let's start a little bit with what I want to call the big picture. So in your book, Rewiring Your Mind for AI, you introduce the concept of the era of intelligence. How do you define this era, and why do you think it requires us to fundamentally rethink how we work and lead?
Yeah. Tom, you're always talking about disruption. And if you think about it, right now, we have so many different things going on, from politics to you have disruption with technology to all sorts of different things. The era of intelligence really harkens back to this idea that we keep moving forward with our abilities with technology. So AI has been around for a long time, decades, but just a couple years ago, it became massively distributed with ChatGPT. And so the era of intelligence for me is this idea that we have very easy to use technology that's incredibly bright and everybody has access to it. So the key question is now, how do you survive or thrive in this era? And that's where this whole point of this book is that, yes, you need to learn how to use the technology, but even more than that, you need to change how you're thinking about technology and the work you do. And as you do both of that, you take skills and a mindset and combine those, you're going to be able to have awesome, awesome opportunities.
It's amazing. That's one of the things that clearly resonated with me a lot in that book. We talk a lot about mindset. We've got a whole bunch of research that we've used on this. And there's no question, mindset is like the number one piece for any of these technology transformations. And you nailed it inside the book, which I really found fascinating from that standpoint. So that leads to my next question, which is, let's talk about this mindset shift. So this, again, one of the most powerful themes in your book is this focus on mindset. What's the most important mindset change you believe finance and accounting professionals need to embrace to thrive in this new era?
Well, it's not just one simple thing. I wish I could just say, if you do this one simple thing, there's a silver bullet and everything's going to be perfect. But it is going to be a journey. I'll start with the very first mindset, which is you have to change this idea from a fixed to a growth mindset.
Yeah.
You think how often you know a colleague and everything is the exact same. They see it the exact same. They always have the same response in the meeting. Before they even say something, you know what they're going to say. And usually it's pessimistic. It's going to be something about, oh, we can't do that. We've never done it before. I can't change. I don't want anything new. So just to start, as the era of intelligence comes out, you have to be more flexible. Yeah. And this idea of a growth mindset allows you to think, hey, how can I change for the better? And I'll say closely related to that is usually the fixed mindset is rooted in fear. And there's a lot of fear around AI. People, you read the headlines and everyone's going to lose their job, or the Terminator's coming back, or all of these sensationalized stories, and stepping back from that to say, okay, what's real, what's not, and how can I use this to become a better professional? Once you get that part of your mindset down, the rest of it flows naturally from this idea of I can grow and progress and become more than I am today.
Yeah, that is so spot on. And you gave tons of good examples in the book throughout all your chapters, I think, where you really lay out the mindset ideas and gave people, I think, things to really think about from that perspective. So kudos for that. It's wild. Now, let's get to this idea of humans working with the AI, right? I call it the AI collaboration idea. You called it symbio, which I really liked in your book. The idea that the best outcomes come not from humans or AI alone, but from their collaboration. So what does this look like in practice, and what skills or habits can make someone great at working with the AI bots?
Tom, can I be a professor for a minute and go back to history?
Yes, of course.
So this idea comes back. Few of you will remember when we had Gary Kasparov, a chess champion, face the computer, and it was broadcast human versus computer, and it was this big, huge deal a couple decades ago, and the computer won. And everybody said, what's going to happen? It's the end of the world, and all those sorts of things. And of course, that didn't happen. Now, few people followed up on what happened in the chess world. Once he finished, what was really interesting is Gary came back and said, well, let's try and see what happens if we have lots of people enter into chess competitions and anything goes. You can do a computer, you can use a human, you can have teams. And the idea is the best performing groups were humans and computers together. Now, AI is just going to enhance that. AI and what's now capable. Tom, you're super bright, and there's other bright executives out there. There's bright accountants. No one can compete against a bright professional combined with a computer. Yeah. And I'll pull out just a quick example from my research. We did a fraud risk brainstorming session, and we had humans do it or humans with AI do it. And what was fascinating is an intern, the very lowest at the company, an intern with AI outperformed the current professionals with 13 years experience.
Wow.
And so, yeah, exactly. And that's the sort of change we're going to see, that you can take people and combine them with AI, and they're going to produce phenomenal outputs. Now, obviously, I said the intern, the professionals combined with AI did even better. So it's not like it's just going to take all the jobs, and expertise isn't important, but it is going to change what the future looks like.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I've said a bunch of times, like everybody's like, well, is AI going to take over accounting? I go, no, AI is not going to take your job, but an accountant with AI might take your job. So if you don't start to adopt and understand this technology, yeah, those who are using it in your field will start to become more valuable than you are because you don't understand it. So that's been the advice we've been giving people from that standpoint.
I think that's right. I don't know if that's going to be long-term. People like to predict what happens in 5 or 10 years. I struggle to predict what's going to happen by the end of this year, but at least to get started, the sooner you embrace technology and start working with it, the better off you're going to be for whatever does come in 3, 5, 10, 20 years. Yeah. So absolutely get started as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think sound advice for sure, David. All right, let's talk a little bit about this idea of how is this going to impact accounting and finance education? That's a big one. So how do you see accounting and finance education changing in the age of AI? And I know you're on the front lines here. So what should we be doing differently today to prepare students for the kinds of roles and leadership challenges they'll face right out of school?
This is a very deep question, and it's one I'm asking weekly and trying to brainstorm and figure out. I do not have all the answers, but I will provide a few thoughts and suggestions of where we see this going. One of the things AI does is it makes intelligence cheaper. And what I mean by that is now you have anybody who sits on their phone or on the web and they pull up Gemini or Anthropic or ChatGPT and they can type something in and get an answer. And generally it's correct. All right. So now I'm sitting in a classroom and I've got 50 students out there and I'm teaching, and every single one of them with their cell phones is smarter than me on every single topic. So Tom, imagine that. You used to go to school. Remember, you went to school because you wanted to learn from the professor because they were the ones who knew everything.
Right, right.
And now you're sitting there with me and you know more than me. You pull out your phone and you're like, Professor, you're actually wrong on that topic.
Yeah, yeah.
So you stop and think about what that means from education. Knowledge has become cheaper. So what now is more valuable? Well, I love to talk about how knowledge is great, but once you combine knowledge with experience and with expertise, you turn into wisdom. Yeah. And so if we think about what's going to change in education, both at the university, at the high school, but as the professional level as well, because you spend as much time educating as we do and learning, is the idea of I know something, I can get an answer, but what do I do with that knowledge? How do I take that forward and accomplish a task? And so I think the very first thing that's going to change is we're going to have to think through and change just testing and trying to see if people know a lot to more what can they do. And I'll give you an example. In my class, it used to be, in most classes, you'll remember back to your school, you studied a whole bunch and then you took a really hard exam. You can think a CPA exam or intro financial one or whatever the case may be. Well, that memorization is now not nearly as important as, okay, once you do that, how do you solve a problem? Here's a project. Here's an unstructured situation. So I think as we start thinking of education, we're going to have to move more and more to this idea of embracing ambiguity and problem solving and bringing all of that to the forefront. Now, for me, that's a lot more exciting. The old Charlie Brown ones, you remember in your head, Tom, you're hearing wah, 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 wah. I often feel like that as a professor. If I talk for more than 2 minutes, the eyes glaze over and everybody's like, okay, check out, this guy's not that funny or interesting. Well, more and more now, it's the students who are going to be peer teaching. They're going to be discovering. They're going to be learning and creating, inventing even. And that's a big change in the accounting and finance space, where forever we used to say, no, creative accountants go to jail. No, now creative accountants are the ones we want to promote because they're the ones that are going to come up with the great ideas.
That's so true. That's for sure. And now I know we talked a little bit before when I first met you. You're doing like scenarios, because the other part I sit there and worry about is, so what's going to happen when accounting is almost fully automated? Because right now, the early jobs in accounting are effectively like apprenticeships where you're practicing understanding where the numbers are coming from and where they're going to and putting them in and out of systems. And when that starts to become more and more automated, how will that student that you're teaching, who's now understands the language of business, but how will they apply that when they don't have that hands-on stuff?
You ask hard questions.
I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
Well, it's a fascinating question. A lot of people, when AI started, coming, when I say AI coming out, I'm talking ChatGPT.
Yeah.
When Gen AI came out and it was ubiquitous, people started saying, well, education's not as important because now I can just go to AI and ask it a question.
Right.
I actually think the exact opposite is true. Education is going to become far more important, because now you can't enter the profession with this level of knowledge. You have to enter this with this level of knowledge. And as a professional, as a manager, it's not okay to be at this level. You have to be up a level higher. So everybody is going to have to upskill. Now, on the question of what do you do as things get automated, we've seen this before. Microsoft Excel came out, and older people remember Lotus and Quattro Pro and all of those fun things. Since Microsoft Excel, kind of the big one, came out, we've seen the number of bookkeepers cut in half, even though populations have grown. So we've already automated a huge part of what was traditionally accounting, the bookkeeping. What we saw after that is the rise of analysts and auditors and other professions kind of take the place of that.
Yeah.
So as we think of what's the future of accounting, nobody knows, but I'm confident there's something on the other side of AI. And so we have to start figuring that out. What are we going to do once these tasks are automated away? And that's where mindsets come in, is changing it as, I don't have to know the answer, but I can trust the process, that if I'm learning, I'm progressing, I'm working with teams, I'm getting better with technology, I'll be ready for what's ever on the other side of AI.
I like that. I really like so the human skills are going to become more important as we go forward. You're going to still have to have that baseline technical knowledge. I think everyone would agree on that. That's the language of business, so to speak. But it's applying it, to your point, and to add value. Our whole future finance research and what we're seeing in our major corporations is this solid move to extra value, right? So now the idea is the CFO is becoming the chief future officer.
Oh, that's a great one.
That's right. That's how they're talking about it. And what I love is, I like to say we're in a moment where we're going to make accounting, we're going to shift it from a past tense occupation to a future tense occupation. Right.
I love that future tense. I'm going to use that. I'm going to steal that one from you, Tom. I'll give you credit. but absolutely, this idea of, we've been historically focused, and we need to get to prediction, but also with the human element. And the human element is going to be more important. We learned from COVID, there are things you can do online. You can film this podcast, but it's not as great as being in person and having that interaction. and the result that comes from humans working together. We're just going to take that and add a little bit of AI to it and enhance it even more so that we can look to the future and spend time on creativity and what's coming next.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. That is extremely exciting. Now, one of the things that was in your book that I love and I've been talking about, in fact, I'm going to use it today, as a matter of fact, but you said that one of the AI leaders in AI you were talking to in a big four said that, David, you're going to have to prepare your students to supervise a group of PhDs. And I know exactly what that meant. So tell the audience how that came about and what you mean by that.
Yeah, so I was sitting in this conference room and a leader of one of the big fours came out and said, day one, your students need to lead a team of PhDs when they start at our firm. And I was like, what in the world? Well, he's talking about AI and this multi-agent, that there are now tools that can do all of these different things. And somebody has to sit back and say, what should they do?
Yeah.
And I'm going to send this tool over here to do this and this to do here, and manage not just the AI, but then also how do we get humans connected into that? And so, Tom, you're really great at this. The AI is really great at that. Will you go do this and this and then work together? And collectively, this team approach, we come up with the solution. So there's another soft skill. How do you have leadership and get AI and humans to work together nicely?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, we're looking at like work plans in some of these major finance groups where, you know, how they put the little icons that are human, you know, the little people icons, there's like 30 of them. And then they show like 5 years out and suddenly there's maybe 25 of them. And then there's icons for bots, meaning RPA, and icons for AI symbols. So they're basically laying out that the future workforce is a blended workforce. Which then reminds me, I heard the quote by Mark Benioff, Salesforce CEO. He said, we're the last generation of CEOs to manage an all-human workforce.
Well, and I think it's important to say, this isn't the far future. No. This is already happening in organizations. I was just training an internal audit group, a governmental internal audit group, who they don't typically get huge amounts of funding, but they're already using AI and saying, okay, we can outsource this task to the AI to do this. We can do this one here, and sort of leverage what they have in their resources to accomplish a lot more. So I think we have to be careful saying too much about the future because it's now.
Right. It's very, very now. So I think spot on. All right, let's start to wrap up here. So if you could offer one piece of advice to my finance leaders who are out there watching this, who are feeling overwhelmed by AI and change, what would you tell them to do to help them start rewiring their mindset and be ready to work with AI?
Great. I've pondered a lot. You presented this question before for me to think about. Number one is take a deep breath and relax. If you listen to all the podcasts and go to all the conferences, everybody's racing on AI and they're so far ahead. Well, the reality is everybody's kind of progressing at different skills. Some are ignoring it, but most are starting. So if you've started at all, you're in a good place. Number two is this is a journey. The key is going to be starting and consistently progressing along that path. Now, how do you do that? One, you buy this awesome book that you're talking about, but no, really, you got to build skills and you got to change people's minds. Right now, the technology abilities are ahead of where the people are. Yeah. And so I'd say the next big thing to focus on is your people. And how do you do that? You have them start experimenting. You start giving them license to try a few things and then a few more, and then you form teams that can share. As you do that, you're going to find that this isn't a top-down approach, that this is a collective, whole organization comes together and says, hey, I found this awesome way to do this. And someone else says, oh, wow, did you try this? And someone will say, this one didn't work. Yeah. And collectively, you'll create a community of understanding that can progress and keep up with what's changing in AI.
So again, you're emphasizing the concept of collaboration, which we believe is right. It gets back to the, we are smarter than me and the wisdom of teams. And now the teams will include AI. That's the next level of that, right? So it's about thinking about those pieces. I do love your wisdom concept. I think this whole data, information, knowledge, wisdom pyramid, right? That's what you're alluding to, which is exactly what the March in Finance is doing. So back to this, I want the audience there. The book is Rewiring Your Mindset for AI, How to Think, Work, and Thrive in the Era of Intelligence. You can get it anywhere books are sold, including Amazon, and it's by David Wood. And so David, what else, how can they get in touch with you? Are you on Twitter? I mean, I know they could look you up on LinkedIn. Any other ways for them to get in touch with you at all?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is number one place I post. I try to share what I'm learning and learn from others. So I like the large community there. And then email. So I still old school. I don't do all the new stuff, but email drives what I do. So LinkedIn and email are my two favorites.
All right. Do you want to share your email, or you want to?
It's very simple. davidwood@byu.edu.
Okay.
So.
davidwood@byu.edu. All right. Well, this was awesome to catch up to you, and I've been waiting for this. All right, so thank you for joining me, and don't miss our other Future Ready Live sessions back here on LinkedIn the first and third Tuesday of each month at noon Eastern. We'll see you then, and thanks again, David.
Thank you, Tom.